Also a very good player. Then we have MYM RDU, who doesn't need an introduction. RDU is just rocking the scene. He's like winning everything. He won a WEC, qualifying him for the Chinese tournament, the WEC tournament in China. He won DreamHack Summer, and he also finished third/fourth place at DreamHack Bucharest, and fourth place at IM Shenzhen. Like, this guy is just winning everything. And our last player might not be known to everybody. It's Root Xixo, the fastest player to get to Legend almost every season. This guy is a machine. It's like when the season starts, he starts playing it and he doesn't sleep. He just grinds all those poor players. He gets to Legend, and then when he plays first game as a Legendary player, he faces rank 25 player because there's no one else to play, and people are just starting when he's already Legend. Those are our players for today.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Our first matchup is RDU versus Xixo. Thank you for doing a great job warming it up. And let's take a look at, just jump straight into the selection and ban process. It seems like Warlock has been the ban choices for both these guys, and for good reason. Warlock's just been one of the strongest classes that benefit off of Naxxramas, whether you're Zoo or Handlock. And it seems as if Xixo is going to lead with his Miracle Rogue, which is tried and true, the deck that he often used to climb ladder, but also used Zoo. And RDU is going to end up playing the Mirror. Now, RDU is a player who's practiced this Mirror thousands of times, he told me, with his former teammates before he joined MYM, so he knows this matchup. But Xixo is also a ladder warrior, which means he knows the Miracle matchup as well, because everyone in the top 10 or 15 or 100 have to have some proficiency with Miracle Rogue in some way or another. So I expect this series to be lightning fast. I think it's going to be really explosive, and I'm really looking forward to how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, definitely both players know their matchups. Also to remind you guys, we will have the best of 5 format here with the bans. So players can select the decks that they want to veto/ban from their opponents. So you can kind of like create your own meta game here. Because if you feel like you don't want to play versus Miracle Rogue ever, you can just ban it every time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Guys, now we have a quick second before the game starts. I want to remind you about the sponsor of the tournament. The VGVN might be a mystery acronym for many people. It's the Video Games Voter Network. Make sure to go check out more information at the bottom of the Twitch screen. We'll be bringing up later throughout the broadcast. But the game has started, so let's talk a little bit about the opening mulligans.
Well, it's hard to say something about the mulligans. Like, the opening hands here, like, let's look at Xixo hand. It's there's no gadgets on, but he has Deadly Poison, he has Azure Drake, so he has some potential to deal damage, and he gets Assassin's Blade, which is pretty important in the mirror. On the other hand, RDU has the gadgets on, he has Preparation, has Deadly Poison as well, and has the coin. So for now, an Assassin's Blade as well. Right now, it looks better for RDU with all the tools that he needs to win the game in here.
I think so. He has double Gadget Sand, which might not end up being that much valuable compared to just having Assassin's Blade and drawing with the first Gadget Sand. The second Gadget Sand might be a little bit luxurious, depends on how things pan out. The Miracle matchup we even mentioned yesterday and saw a demonstration was it also turns into a race. And when you have things like Assassin's Blade, it secures your position in a race because that's 12 to 20 damage that you can kind of squeeze in throughout the course of a few turns if you just get that Deadly Poison charge in and start whacking away. And the early board development is also important. Things like the Farseer and SI7 Agent, if they go unchecked, they can also do lots of damage and eventually start winning you that race too.
I'm really curious to see how this game will unfold because Xixo is starting, so he will be able to play his Assassin's Blade first. But as we see, like, this is, as you said, this is the race. And those players who just dealing damage, and there is a Leroy on Xixo hand. He starts dealing damage with Assassin's Blade right now, so maybe he will actually, like, win the race, because it's not about who will play Gadgets in first and combo first with Gadgets and draw as many cards as possible. It's about who will actually, like, deal as much damage as possible to his opponent.
Check this out. He has double Farce here. He's going to coin immediately, use that 20 damage, and go straight to the face, and he does have the Eviscerate as well, so over the course of 4 turns, he has damage to end the game, but will it last that long? Xixo does have the Leroy, like you mentioned, and a Shadow Step, so if you can kind of pair together 9 more damage, well, let's see, he's got 3 more next turn, so 6 more damage, maybe he can kind of make it happen. In fact, I think with Eviscerate and Blade Flurry, and with a Preparation, Is there a way for Xixo to kind of set it up so that way he guarantees lethal next turn?
It definitely looks very dangerous right now. If he plays Azure Drake, he can actually like, even use Eviscerate preparation. Okay, he's not going for that. But right now, our RDU is sending a clear message that, hey, I'm just racing you. I'm attacking you with everything I have. So maybe it's a message like, I don't have a very good hand, and I have my Leroy, so I want to just grind you down as fast as possible. But those farces are pretty meaningful in this match.
Absolutely. It just reduces that Leroy damage and heals him back up. RDU has 2 Farseers out,
Wait,
but
is that
Xixo
it?
does have...
That's it. That's default.
Yeah, the Shadow Step plus the preparation and the Blade Flurry allows him to end the game. And we're talking about this matchup can be so quick and explosive. The turns took almost no time to play for both players.
This is just crazy. It just went so fast. It's like lightning speed of the game. And you see like Gadget-san was not even played because there was just not enough time.
Absolutely. You know, we were saying the second Gadget-san's a little bit of a luxury. The first, even in this regard, was not able to be played. So RDU will have to turn to Shaman right away. But that kind of stings because he doesn't necessarily have a lot of good lineup to face off against the Miracle Rogue after the Rogue's being taken down. He's got Warrior and he's got Shaman, 2 classes where I think the Miracle Rogue is really comfortable going up against.
Especially if you have Assassin's Blade, which helps to clear the board versus Shaman, and versus Warrior, it provides you with the extra damage that they also need. Xixo is a very dangerous player when he plays Miracle Rogue. He's also known for 4-0ing my team at some point. There was a Gamers Origin tournament, team versus team. We were facing Root. It was player versus player, and a player who wins stays. And Xixo was the second player from Team Root, and he actually like 4-0'd Cloud9 at that point with Miracle Rogue. So he's definitely good with the deck. He knows how to play it. He knows his matchups. Mostly when he's getting to Legend 1 every season, he's also using Miracle Rogue. Definitely skilled. I know that Xixo actually advanced from the open bracket like lucky yesterday. So he had to play versus all those good players. He also defeated RDU in the open bracket. So RDU might have some kind of like a mental damage after that game. He knows that he lost versus Xixo, so maybe he's kind of like afraid a bit to play now. It's like,
I don't think he's afraid. I think he definitely wants to win more than anything. RDU is a guy who likes to challenge and prove that he's a great player to people who he's also dropped to. You know, he lost to Amaz at IEM. One of the first things he says, I want to play him again. I want to play him again. And he doesn't shy away from the ability to prove himself and win. And you bring up a great point. RDU was the one who was eliminated by Xixo in the open qualifiers, but because Kalento was not able to make it, RDU was the highest finisher from the open bracket who didn't qualify. So he is essentially an open qualifier and trying to show that he can also do it from the other end. People say RDU, maybe he shouldn't be invited all the time. Maybe he had one lucky tournament and he keeps getting invited. Not the case. He's coming in through these open brackets and proving throughout the 256 players, he's one of the 3 guys who can qualify for this tournament. Now, by the way, a quick aside, we do recognize that there's a little bit of asset error. There's no Wild Growth being played in either decks. Or Violet Teachers and Miracle Rogue, for example. It's a little bit of a flub, but we hope that people also appreciate the cool art that's being displayed throughout the entire broadcast. Quick shout out again for the production guys for putting out some cool stuff.
okay, so that was a fast mulligan. I actually haven't noticed what was mulliganed away, but those players definitely know how to mulligan with those decks. RDU's hand is pretty bad. Double Lightning Storm.
Yeah, double Lightning Storm is really ineffective unless you have something to spell power like a Thalnos, and maybe you can answer a concealed Gadget. That's pretty much the only use of Lightning Storm unless they flood the board with a lot of 3/3s early on.
So maybe, Frodan, let's say, like, what kind of hand do you want versus Miracle Rogue? Because this is a very tricky matchup for the Shaman. You're mostly playing against what the Miracle Rogue will draw. You know that if you overextend, there is a possibility of Deadly Poison and Blade Flurry. Also, Miracle Rogue has a lot of ways to actually clear the board. So what do you want to have being a Shaman? Like, I feel like Haunted Creeper is a card you want.
Yep. anything that's sticky. You have some people play Harvest Golem. Sometimes they play Nerubian Eggs, Haunted Creepers. Things that stick to the board and continue to pound damage is great. I like having Feral Spirits in the opening hand as well, just so that way you can continue to time and disrupt the rogue, or you can continue to pressure if they don't have something like Deadly Poison, they force it out. Unfortunately for RDU, he has a very reactive hand. Hex, Earthshock, Lightning Storm, Lightning Bolt, these are great to kind of answer threats, but Shaman's not really able to put back pressure. He does have Lotheb, which is, again, a very reactive card. It's not that he's going to drop something preemptively and try to just let his opponent pass a turn anyways. He's going to try to drop and time it accordingly, but he needs a follow-up because Lotheb is great on its own, but it also needs a consecutive plan.
Right now it looks very good for Xixo because RDU is not able to push with damage, push with board, unless he's playing Bloodlust, but I don't feel like he's playing one. So he's just giving Xixo time to get the cards, to get the combos, and to draw everything he needs.
Xixo also runs Double Conceal, which is an interesting flavor that more players are once again adapting. Double Conceal was kind of at the beginning of Miracle because it made sense. You were playing things like Questing Adventurer and Mana Addict, really trolly cards like that. And you eventually built it up with Conceals and being able to be powerful in the next coming turns. Ever since then, they kind of started cutting back because they felt like it was a little greedy and you want more minions. But then a lot of players started introducing it back again, so it's interesting it being cycled back in after players kind of ditched it at first.
Oh yeah, definitely. I like Double Conceal. It enables you to play more aggressively, I guess. Play just a couple of minions, like free drops, and then Conceal to protect your board, to be able to push even more damage instead of just waiting with the Conceal for Gadgetzan.
But you do see the fact that Double Conceal in his hand is sitting there with no ability to be used. If it was a minion, say it was, I don't know, a Gnomish Inventor of some kind or Ascension, he could have been dropping that and responding to the board. Because of the passivity, it's giving RDU plenty of time to react. He's sitting on full life, a lot of cards, a pretty decent built-up board, and he's being very patient with his Feral Spirits. He realizes he wants to force his opponent to feel like he has to AoE with things like Blade Flurry. He's already shown Fan of Knives as well. So if you can kind of wait out the AoE, things like Feral Spirits completely disrupt the Rogue's turn, especially if you pair it with something like Lotheb late game. Lotheb Feral Spirits is so sick.
Right now, looking at Xixo hand, Xixo is losing to himself. With no gadgets on, this hand is pretty bad, with a lot of spells that you can't effectively use. Both preparations, Conceal, everything he has is just useless right now. If he decides to like backstab a Taunt Totem and attack with Leroy and then Conceal it, it's pretty deadly with possibility of a Lightning Storm. So I guess he might actually Shadow Step here. Just concealing Leroy will be too dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to trust the Shaman to be able to do any of that whatsoever. So he's just going to use up his mana as much as possible and do something rather than just wait for his opponent. He also is going to attack with his dagger rather than use it, or rather than save it for something like Blade Flurry. That's an interesting stylistic choice. But I think he feels pressured to just do something this turn because he's been sitting back, letting Shaman build up the board, and it's a very dangerous game to play.
And there is the Lotheb, who will seal Xixo with the spells, so it will be pretty hard for Xixo to actually do anything this turn. Unless he gets Assassin's Blade from the top.
And in a very weird way, because RDU's built up the board so much, he can't necessarily get a Taunter unless he hexes his own minion right now. All right, well, Xixo does top deck a second Deadly Poison, which might be important if he picks up Blade Flurry. Whoa, Doomhammer off the top with double Rockbiter. I believe that's enough bursts to end the game. That is crazy. Oh my gosh, what a ridiculous game. Just because neither player had anything to do, but RDU finally drawed minions to play and things to damage his opponent with. And it was an extremely passive moment for Miracle Rogue because it's like we said before, Double Conceal is great when you pair it with something like Gadgetzan. But when you have both of them in hand and nothing to do, you're just a sitting duck and waiting for it to come. And it happens 1 every 5, 1 every 4 games.
Well, it's just a drawback of Miracle Rogues. It's when you get a Gadgetzan, this deck is amazing versus anything. And when you don't get a Gadgetzan, it's pretty tricky to win versus. It's very hard to win versus those decks like Shaman and other stuff.
All right. Well, Xixo is going to go with Hunter. And it seems like he is playing the trap, one trap at least, the freezing trap. But we've been seeing people scale back things like the Eagle Horn Bow and traps for going for a more minion-centric, Sunshine Hunter-esque style again. And a few other tech cards like Stampede and Kodo.
Yeah, Hunter is a very nice pick in here. Hunter is a counter to Shaman, so it should go pretty good for Xixo. He knows that he feels comfortable playing Hunter against Shaman. You can use cards like Unleash the Hounds to spawn the board, and it looks pretty good. So definitely a nice pick from Xixo here.
Yeah, I think so. People kind of still feel that High Man's a little vulnerable to Hex and Earth Shock, depending on the situation. But with things like Web Spinner and Haunted Creeper really annoying Shaman early on, not only does it improve the consistency, but it gives you ways to kind of answer the totems. So that way they can't get good trades off things like Flame Tongue and things like Oasis, Snapjaw, and your animal companions have a much higher chance of living. And these things just kind of compound into improving the consistency once again, where Hunter feels like it's still pretty strong despite the fact that Shaman has answers. Not to mention, like you said, there is no healing for Shaman. So I'm on your side. I feel like Hunter is a great choice. Warrior versus Shaman is always one of those things where it depends who you're asking. Are you asking Kit Kats or are you asking any other pro in Hearthstone? And I think you can't really say it's completely one way or the other in terms of favorable matchups.
It's pretty even, I think. It depends on who's playing and if he knows the matchup. But people playing Shaman, they feel good versus Warrior, and Warrior players feel good versus Shaman.
Definitely so. Opening mulligans for Xixo, he does have the Animal Companion, which is, again, a very crucial card to start things off, so that way you're not just hero powering the first few turns. But it is still pretty slow. He doesn't have things like Haunted Creeper or Web Spinner.
Greetings, friend. Greetings, traveler.
On the other hand, RDU has a coin, which is pretty nice. So, Hunter Creeper, a nice draw.
That is really nice.
Yeah, right now he can actually curve out pretty well with Hunter Creeper on turn 2, Animal Companion turn 3. And Kodo is always good versus Shaman, I'd say. With the totems, with Feral Spirit, there's always something you can do with the Kodo. And Huffer pushes the damage even more.
Yeah, Huffer sometimes as a mid-range, most of the time as a mid-range hunter, you're kind of sad about Huffer. But if the board is not really intimidating and you're not really afraid of damage off the top, then maybe it's not so bad because you squeeze in damage. Still, I feel like going for board control, things like Misha, even Leok to a certain extent when you have Haunted Creeper is much better. And that healing totem is very important too, so that way the Shaman can continue to control the board. So a very nice roll for RDU to start the game.
I'm sure you're pretty happy seeing double Web Spinner here for the Web Spinner madness.
It's gonna be amazing. And RDU, I thought he was gonna opt to maybe Lightning Storm, but then that would block his Azure Drake turn. He plays something off the top, which I didn't see what it was. Oh, it's the Unbound Elemental. Perfectly good response. Continue to push the board. And he's opting to not give his opponent any beast. He says, if you want to draw something off Web Spinner, you're gonna have to tack into me first.
And the Web Spinner is not going to die easily this turn. And he gets...
Oh, he gets the Unbound. That is so
nice
huge, considering things like Lightning Storm to buff the Unbound Elemental.
Well, right now RDU would normally play Azure Drake. He has a pretty nice curve with like Fire Elemental turn 6 and possible Alakir turn 7 with the coin. But still, what's your game plan in here? Because Hunter is having a lot of minions. A lot of potential as well. I like Lothep here, by the way. Because he's just building the board. With Lothep, he ensures that there will be no Lightning Storm next turn. So he's pushing with damage, he stabilizes the board. And he can actually expect only Fire Elemental next turn. I would maybe even play Stontus War, because why not?
Yeah, and these Web Spinners have also acted like an additional hero power every single turn for the past 2 or 3 turns that it's been up. RDU's trying to be playing a little bit aggressive with his Haunted Creeper, realizing that he might be missing damage and allowing the Web Spinners to playing into the hands of the Web Spinner by attacking it. And in this respect, Ardeus keeps losing health, and now he's facing a full board where, once again, Hunter should be able to push through and destroy his board.
Can Xixo actually win this turn?
Well, it depends what
If he gets like a kill command.
Oh, wait, let's see. Kill command. I think so. Like, just
kill
let's
command at
count
7
it and
points
see
of damage. So he needs to deal 8. He can deal 8 with like Lothep and 3 creatures.
Lotheb and maybe just the Kodo.
I feel he's like
Wow.
1 damage off lethal, kind of.
Well, hold on. Maybe
Oh,
he gets a
Huffer.
Leok. Oh, a Huffer does it as well, because Leok was
Yeah.
going to buff the rest of the board, but Huffer also compartmentalized that damage into a straight direction.
That's
And I
it.
think that's it. Xixo has been able to end this game very quickly once again. And game number 3 was also extremely fast.
I really like the use of Lothep here. It's Lothep being played on a certain turn allowed Xixo to actually like, overextend fully to totally counter AoE removal, the Lightning Storm. So he knew that for this turn, hey, I can like go all in, play all the creatures, attack into you, deal as much damage as possible, and on next turn I will still have this board because you won't be able to clear it with spells. So I really like this with the cards he got, and also tracking was pretty useful with getting the kill command to seal the deal, Huffer as well. But even if he seemed to get lucky with like the kill command and Huffer, still he put himself in a position where it would be extremely difficult for Shaman to actually get back from here.
Definitely agree. And I think, as much as Xixo didn't really start off with the most appealing hand, things curved out nicely. And that's what the Hunter deck does. It specializes in being able to curve out much better now that they have lots of ways to continue to squeeze things in the mana curve. And again, you can kind of make an argument. Maybe RDU should have been a little bit more aggressive clearing the board instead of just letting Hunter build upon it. But at the same time, his hand was pretty poor to kind of follow it up, other than just having nice minions to drop. But he didn't really have great ways to answer everything at the same time. Now he's going to turn to his warrior class, and it has a couple of interesting choices. It seems like he's included things like Harrison Jones in order to answer other weapon classes, and even has Black Knight. So he's got both of those. Usually you can make an argument that only one of them fits in these kinds of control decks because you don't have the opportunity to always be able to respond to everything of those, Harrison and Black Knight. But RDU has both of them. It's interesting.
It's interesting that he's running a control warrior because before he was running mostly like a mid-range deck. So with RDU, you never know what kind of deck are you playing, and he's playing. So for Xixo, it might also be difficult because if he was studying RDU, what RDU was playing before, like RDU was playing all the different kinds of warrior, like even a face warrior at some point, I think. Here, Unstable Ghoul might be actually pretty good against those small creatures, like tokens from Haunted Creeper and from Unleash the Hounds. So definitely we'll see how it goes.
I think so. And he does have those Spectre Knights, like you mentioned, so that way he can be good against things like Miracle Rogue too, if this warrior is called upon. Great start for Xixo. Looks like almost a perfect curve in almost every kind of situation, whether he's facing aggressive or passive opening.
It definitely looks sick with the Haunted Creeper turn 2, or even Animal Companion turn 2, Animal Companion turn 3, Trap, and Hunters and the bow. It's like, oh my god.
Oh, and he rolls a Huffer to deal with the Armor Smith immediately. That's bad news for RDU.
He has no Whirlwind, and he has no Unstable Ghoul. Alexstrasza is a big blank right now, so this Huffer is like doing so much work with 4 damage into hero, and also dealing with the Armor Smith. Armor Smith was kind of good to have against Hunter, but if it just dies, it's bad.
Definitely. I mean, that's just why we were saying his hand looked really good, because he had versatility to answer almost anything that came in his way. RDU does have Slam to kind of continue to push out. He's drawing into things to continue to build upon his draw advantage. And once again, it seems like Web Spinner is just this Cold War, right? Like, no one wants to attack and kill it. So at the same time, if Web Spinner doesn't have to die, hunters don't let it. Now, finally, with a taunt in its way, we're going to find out what Xixo is drawing off of it.
Haunted Creeper, that's pretty nice, I'd say.
I think so. A third copy of Haunted Creeper is maybe not so bad.
Yeah, definitely it's better than the Angry Chicken. I mean, you could get a Rhino or a Kodo, but Haunted Creeper is always good. And it's against Warrior, it's a cool card to have, because Warrior has all those cards to clear stuff like Brawl, the removal cards, Slam, Shield Slam, and with the Death Rattle minions like Harvest Golems, Haunted Creepers, you're always happy to have those kinds of cards versus Warrior.
Now we finally hit a turn where maybe Xixo's response isn't so clear. Before, in the very beginning, it was just straightforward. Drop minions, continue to clear what Warrior has, make sure that you're able to pick good trades with things like your weapons. And now he's placing double Haunted Creepers, and RDU is starting to draw into things like his Armor Smith and Undead Ghouls, and another cool Taskmaster. All of these are great tools in fighting against things like these small creatures.
Those are great cards to have instead of just getting high-end cards that are just annoying and you don't need them. He's getting all those anti-aggro cards that are pretty good in here. Unstable Ghoul just clearing the board almost, and also giving RDU armor from the second Armor Smith. It's like he got it at the exact time he needed it, because Armor Smith later in late game is just a dead card, but now and here it can do a lot of work.
Okay, how does Xixo respond from here? Is he going to play something like his Houndmaster, but then he's going to be weakening his own Houndmaster and making him more vulnerable to other things? So he's going to try to cut his losses, but the nice thing is he does end up killing off that cruel Taskmaster despite losing his own Spectral Spiders.
RDU is getting so much armor from this Armor Smith. There is a lot of value in there. What Xixo has to do is to just build the board and hope that the board is enough to survive in here. Spectral Knight from RDU,
Ooh.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think taking the opportunity to develop Gorehowl is great. You're expecting eventual things like the Savannah Highmane, and you also have an opportunity to continue to gain armor and value out of this Armor Smith. Plus, if something like the Houndmaster continues to trade in, you have Cruel Taskmaster to answer the board. But Akodo is also a great tool to respond to whatever warrior drops with 2 attack or less, Acolytes, Undead Ghouls, and those Armor Smiths.
I feel like Gorehowl is so important here because he will be able to clear effectively, and he can pay life for killing the minions because he still has the Naxxramas just in case. So even if he drops really low with Gorehowl, attacking into minions every turn, he will be able to top himself up with Naxxramas next turn.
A very slight sequence error here for RDU. I don't think it's actually going to matter because most likely Hunter's going to be shredded, but you can armor up and shield slam as your last bit, so that way you have 2 armor instead of 0. But again, I don't know if that's actually going to be a consequence. Most likely Hunter's going to be hero powering and shredding it, so I don't think it impacted whatsoever, but a small little misplay from RDU here.
Testing the trap.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Freezing Trap works on Spectral Knight, even though it's untargetable.
Yeah, Spectral Knight is just so good against Hunter, and I was kind of testing it a little bit and realizing that Spectral Knight gives Hunter so much of a headache because they can't remove it whatsoever, and because usually it's big enough that it costs so much of mana that you're not able to draw multiple minions. At the same time, it also doesn't fill up the board, so Unleash the Hounds isn't great against it either. Spectral Knight's very good against Hunter overall.
A very interesting play in here. RDU is going for the win instead of just stabilizing.
I think if you calculate damage with Cruel Taskmaster and the Gorehowl next turn, you have 15 damage. So unless he has Houndmaster or a way to kill off this Naxxramas / stall, then he might win the game. RDU is making a 2-turn play here for lethal.
Also, the thing is, RDU've seen 1 Freezing Trap out of the way, so he might have felt like, hey, Freezing Trap is out of the way, so then I can play Naxxramas and win next turn easily.
I don't think he's playing something like Kor'kron either. Yeah, Kor'kron would be able to proc that Freezing Trap, and he can still play Cool Taskmaster and win. So it's still going to be kind of tight. Xixo does pick up Web Spinner off the tracking, and let's see what he continues to draw.
Another tracking, it's very interesting. Yeah, I guess he was digging for Hunter's Mark, but then again, even with tracking, there is a chance that Hunter's Mark is not there, so you definitely want to play Freezing Trap.
Wow, that is a really nice draw here for RDU. Whirlwind off the top to clear everything of his opponent's side. He does give him a card with Web Spinner, but that does give him the ability to set up. If he plays like Loteb, maybe he can trigger and then go for the kill next turn. Meanwhile, still just stalling. 13 health doesn't feel like the safest against Hunter, but your opponent doesn't hold that many cards. Xixo gets a second Highmane off of the Web Spinner, but again, he has spells in his hand, so most likely he's going to have a very slow turn.
Is he just dead? How much health does... It's like Naxxramas is 8?
Oh, you're right. I was kind of wondering, can he pick something out with a spell, but he can't play it, so it's over.
That's it. That's exactly 15.
Yeah, already used play few turns earlier to set himself up for this lethal has paid off, and now he's going to tie up the series. A lot of people won't take that gamble. They play really safe. oh, my Spectral Knight gets Freezing Trap, maybe play it again, Hunter can't deal with it, and take it slower. But nope, he chose to be a little bit more aggressive. Not really that common you see in Warrior this early on against the Hunter, but it paid off, and now he's able to even it up.
I really like how the Spectral Knight was used in here to bait out that Freezing Trap. So even though it actually didn't do any damage, it was pretty meaningful that the Freezing Trap was out of the way, because that enabled RDU to make the play with Alexstrasza and push for damage.
Absolutely. I think Spectral Knight is so disruptive to what Hunter wants to do, and the forward attack allows it to tackle pretty much anything if you have a little bit of assistance. Warrior is one of those classes that does have a lot of ways to do that one extra damage, so 5 health means nothing, and the forward attack allows you to address almost any animal companion. So I like it as a tool to fight a lot of what Hunter has. Now, Xixo will have to rely on his other warrior, a class that he also is very good at. People don't know Xixo too much for his warrior play, but when Xixo was first climbing to Legend and hitting like the top 10 in EU, he was using decks like the Control Warrior, so he's very good at it. He even coached me a little bit back in the day, and so don't be surprised if he's able to bust out some cool moves.
So Xixo's running Sludge Belcher, and RU is not running a Sludge Belcher. This might be important, and he has an Ysera, so the decks are pretty much different, where RDU is running what we exactly saw, like a standard list with Unstable Ghouls, One Brawl, Lothep, Harrison Jones, Black Knight, Alexstrasza, and Ragnaros. Xixo is going for more late game, kind of. With
Definitely.
Ysera, Belcher,
Sylvanas.
Nimsh, Inventor.
Close, but not quite. He also, just like you said, Harrison Jones might be a blowout card here. I feel like Spectral Knight also might be a big headache for Xixo if you can't easily remove the Spectral Knights. You can't use Execute, you can't use Shield Slam. Oftentimes, your best answers are things like Gore Howl or something on the board with the Fiery War Axe.
So apparently Xixo is also running Harrison Jones.
Yeah. Harrison Jones will be super important for the Gore Howls.
Basically, and there's Sylvanas as well. This might be a very interesting match. Like Warrior versus Warrior, it really depends on the Grommash, I guess. Like, and you have a certain amount of removal, and you want to play those cards and exhaust your opponent's removal. Like you want your opponent to use executes on cards like Cairn, Sylvanas, like use them early so that when you play Ragnaros and when you play Grommash or Ysera, your opponent is out of removal and you just win the game with those big dudes.
And more importantly, I think the early game playing efficiency with cards, like if you're able to draw through with your Acolytes better, so that way you're using better removal options. If you don't have to execute, you Shield Slam and vice versa. So it really depends on how these guys are drawing and being able to get efficiency out of the best way possible. But it seems a very passive opening for both players. You have things like Shield Block, and that's often their lowest card that they can play. So they're just going to be drawing and passing.
Yeah, they are going to stack a lot of armor in here, and also the strength armor is pretty important. So, wait, he didn't tag actually. So he's waiting for some kind of a minion to finish it off with Slam, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he knows his opponent runs things like Spectral Knight and things like Fiery War Axe plus a minion on the board will be important. So perhaps he's waiting for something like the Sludge Belcher to be coming out, but he does have 2 Fiery War Axes. It's like we said, you want to play really efficient. If you just attack 3 to the face, your opponent does have the ability to just keep armoring up.
Oh my god.
And now his opponent plays their own Fiery War Axe.
There is a Black Knight, by the way, so Sludge Belcher is going to get Black Knighted turn 5. This is actually pretty good for RDU.
Yep, okay, maybe he's going to slam instead. There's not many targets to Black Knight in general in Warrior because they don't often run many taunters. Belcher is one of those unique cards where you can run those taunters and really bolster your mid game. Other than that, I think like Savitz used to run a Defender of Argus, so there's not very common scenarios where the Warrior's running taunts.
Yeah, that's curious. I would definitely use the Black Knight in there. On the other hand, Xixo got Cairn, who's pretty good in this matchup. It's hard to remove. Do those players run Faceless, by the way?
I didn't get a chance to see, But as much as Faces is really important, again, the removals are also super important as well. Spectre Knight has dropped into the lap of RDU, and he will push it out immediately. Xixo kind of has to respond, but this is where Spectre Knight can really start flexing his muscles.
Yeah, what are you going to do even? How do you kill the Spectre Knight? I guess you only hope that he is a pacifist.
He's kind of like a lucky Spectral Knight.
Kind of, yeah. But
Sure.
unless, I guess he's not. He's just attacking.
How do you feel about removing this care? Like, what's the best way about it? Do you kind of use minions? Do you use removal? Do you
Double
push out like the
shield slap?
Ragnaros?
Well, you can. I guess the Ragnaros here is pretty nice. If you just using double sheet slam seems like a waste.
All right, well, here it is. By fire be purged, and he wants to land on Karen. Well, he goes to the face. At least he can't armor up shield slam, but Xixo does have a way to remove it with slam execute. Is there a better way to do it though? Does he even have to use
Taskmaster and
that?
slam, I guess. You can slam and use the Taskmaster. It's a pretty good way to remove it, unless you want to remove the Spectral Knight.
I think so. The Spectral Knight is a high priority just to kind of get rid of it. Karen ends up surviving with 1 HP, and RDU's gamble, well, you know, it was kind of a 50-50 that had pros and cons of each. On one hand, you don't hit Karen, but at the same time, you reduce your opponent's armor so he can't easily shield slam, and you bait out an early execute. You're not really expecting your opponent to not have a way to deal with it. You're just kind of tossing it out, and you're expecting these big minions to die.
Look at that Black Knight, how useless it is right now. How are you going to use it in this game? Maybe if there is a second Sludge Belcher.
Sludge Belcher. These games can go into fatigue, so don't underestimate how long saving these cards might end up being valuable. By the way, Gore Howl is up for RDU, and it is one of those scenarios where you want to try to get value out of it, but in the back of your mind, you're really hoping your opponent doesn't have something like Harrison Jones. So if Xixo picks up his Gore Howl, that can also be a huge tempo swing, not to mention the card advantage that you gain from Harrison drawing a card.
The thing is, like, not everybody's running Harrison Jones, and in the recent lists, Harrison Jones was not available, so you can always make an assumption that your opponent doesn't have it, and even if he is running Harrison Jones like Xixo here, there is a chance that he didn't draw into it.
Maybe. Oh, if he drew it off of the cool task on the Acolyte, that would have been devastating. And almost a guaranteed lead to maybe seal the game from there, just because Gore Howl is one of those ways that Warrior can just have extended removal. You only have 2 shield slams, only 2 executes, and just 1 brawl. But this Gore Howl often is a big minion killer as well. Things like Sylvanas can easily die to a Gore Howl that comes out.
It's funny how this game unfolds with all those small minions. Like, we've seen a Ragnaros at one moment pop up, like, but it died instantly. So right now it's like a battle of small minions. They are fighting for those small advantages, just running hard here and there. Pretty.
So if you, what kind of big minion do you feel comfortable playing? You think Ysera is okay, or do you want to let Ysera be a card advantage card? Hopefully your opponent has something like only 1 execute if you play something like Ragnaros, or even BGH. I guess he doesn't want to get removed easily and wants to get Ysera immediate value.
Well, yeah, there is immediate value from Ysera, and this Ysera is playing right into Brawl.
Yeah, unfortunately, he doesn't have execute at the moment. No, RDU draws Alexstrasza, which could be a very valuable card as well. Ysera still might survive, though. 1 in 3 chance. But the cool Taskmaster.
The dragon is going down. And Alexstrasza, by the way, is a very important card in this matchup, because with all those armor, you want to deal that 15 points of damage with 1 card for 9 mana. Deal 15, put an 8/8 dragon on board. That's a sick card.
Xixo gets the Gnomish Inventor, another card that's been recently teched in. It's just to help cycle, especially since the 5-mana slot has been taken over by Belchers and Spectral Knights. Things like Azure Drake has lost potency and usefulness in that mana slot, so things like Gnomish Inventor fits perfectly.
By the way, Sylvanas and Shield Slam. It's a nice combo, by the way, to take the Alexstrasza. And even though Alexstrasza dealt 15 points of damage, Xixo is still at 30. This is the warrior for you. Super hard to deal with. 32. Oh, he's actually killing Alexstrasza. He could have steal it with Sylvanas.
You know, I think The thing about Sylvanas is that in this matchup, it's also another removal because your opponent often doesn't have silence. It's Warriors don't run silence. There's no way. For a while, I think Life Coach or Dark Wanix tested with Spell Breakers, but that didn't really work out that well. So Sylvanas kind of acts as a 6th or 7th piece of removal. I think it's good to keep it. You're playing the long game here. You're not trying to rush your opponent.
You can steal Karen now. That's even better, I guess.
Ah, that is true. Now that's a sick way to use Sylvanas and Shield Slam here. I completely agree with that.
I have no time for games.
Yeah, because Kern is so hard to deal with. So basically,
Oh man.
and he's really doing good here. It's like no Alexstrasza, but RDU is already on 20 points of life.
Gorehal's already lost 3 attack, so the Karen's also going to continue to do more damage. If it was 5 and 4, then you can still kind of have that 1 damage to make up for it, but he needs a little bit more. Now, RDU, again, he still has things like Harrison Jones and Black Knight, things to continue to push the momentum back in his favor, but it does require his opponent to play into it.
Do you feel like RDU is actually losing function here? He used Alexstrasza, and Xixo is, unaffected about it. And Garhal is almost down. Garhal is like Fury Warwick right now without any possible bonus. And he has Grommash still, but you need to deal 34 points of damage to kill Xixo next turn. And Xixo will be gaining life every time. And then also Ragnaros is out of the way. So Xixo is effectively dealing with all the threats.
Yep, but he does have Nightmare, don't forget about that.
That's it.
15, 19 damage, and that's enough to end the game. And Ysera ends up being one of those cards that ends up giving him the trump card to win the game right here. And it's just like we said, as much as it is a late game option, stealing that Karen was a really good opportunity he couldn't miss. And I think at that point, just so much damage was dealt. Karen attacked the face, and you forced Gorehal to also attack into the first copy. A lot of damage there that just set it up for him to win at the moment.
Beautiful game by Xixo. He had this game under control from the beginning till the end. Not only he won by damage, but I feel like if he wouldn't have Grommash, he was on a very good way to actually exhaust RDU's ways to win the game with no Ragnaros, no Garhal, no Alexstrasza. RDU was going downhill with this matchup.
And Xixo jumps out to an early group lead 1-0. And RDU will start 0-1, but he's not out of it yet. Still has to win his next couple series, so don't worry, RDU fans. He'll be back for more later today. Our next series will be Amaz versus Reels, the first appearance for both guys. Lots of room to hype it, and we'll talk about it more after the jump. But before we do that, we want to take this opportunity to talk about the VGVN promotion that's going on throughout the rest of this tournament. If you look at the bottom of the Twitch channel, there is an opportunity to enter to win a PC by CyberPower PC. All you have to do is sign up for the newsletters. It takes just a minute of your time, and the most important thing is that the more people that sign up, the higher likelihood we'll be able to run tournaments like this. It's not necessarily about how many people are throwing in those PJ salts in chat. It's about your guys' proactivity to continue show your support for things like the VGVN. So it's a big shout out to them, and take an opportunity to get to know them. They're the First Amendment fighting group, activist group to fight for your rights, to make sure that video games aren't blamed for the wrong reasons by so many organizations in Congress and other legislation, and a bunch of politics stuff. The most important thing is that they're fighting for a good cause, and all they want you to do is sign up for their newsletters. So make sure to go do that, and you get eligible to win for a cool PC as well with lots of cool specs. So do that while we get ready for our Moz versus Reels first match after the break. You're watching the VGVN Naxxramas release tournament with Frode and Nimsh. We'll be right back in just a couple of minutes.